first quadratic is anything with x squared. So instead of our linear equation, which is y equals mx plus b, we go over to where there's an x squared. So anytime you see an x squared, you're going to think of the curve. It's that ball being thrown in the air that comes up and then comes down again, or that bird diving in the ocean that goes down and comes back up. So it's a symmetrical curve called a parabola. You're going to have to do a few things with it. First, you're going to have to recognize the quadratic, and you will either graph, factor, or solve using the quadratic formula. So those are the kinds of problems that you'll see on the exam. The first thing we're going to go over is a quick review of factoring, because factoring has the four major steps to look at. And this you should write down so that you have this order. That's that table at the end of chapter 9 that had all of the different scenarios for factoring that summarizes. The first thing you always want to look for is the GCF, the greatest common factor. If you find one, if you see one, you pull it out. GCF goes on the outside. The rest of your expression, in other words, the other factor that's left over when you divide everything by the GCF, goes in one parentheses. You will never pull the GCF and break the trinomial into two parts in the same step. It won't happen. You only have one piece here and one bigger piece here. This is the piece you then need to look at to see if you can factor it further. When you're looking at how to factor something further, you're going to look, is it a special case? A special case is one of two things. Is it a special case? Is it difference of squares? Difference of squares is something where you have the square, perfect square on one side, a perfect square on the other side, and a minus in between. X squared minus 36 is difference of squares. You have a difference, you have a subtraction sign, you have a perfect square on one side, perfect square on the other side. It will always factor to the square root of each, one with a plus, one with a minus. Square root of x squared is x, the square root of 36 is 6. One's a plus, one's a minus, so that when you, if you FOILed it to check it, the outer product here and the inner product here would cancel out. That's why there are only two terms in that, and not three. All the other pieces will be trinomials. All the other pieces you need to factor are trinomials, and so that leaves a second special case, and that's a perfect square trinomial. Perfect square trinomial has a perfect square on one side, a perfect square on the other side, but there is a middle term. And an example of that is something like x squared plus 6x plus 9. You don't look at the middle term, you look at the bookends. You look at the first and the last. This is a perfect square, this is a perfect square. X squared, yes?
So there doesn't have to be a subtraction.
Does not have to be a subtraction. This could be positive or negative. We'll look at both. We'll go over to the other board and look at another example with a minus in between. The point is you have a square here, a perfect square here, and a perfect square here. When you factor it, you're going to end up with two parentheses, the square root of the first, the square root of the second. The sign will always be the sign of the middle term. So this is going to be plus, plus. So going over here, I'll show you another example of that. Again, perfect square trinomial. 4x squared minus, we'll leave that blank over here, 36. And what would go in the middle here so that that would complete the perfect square? What would you need in the middle? Because what's going to happen is you're doubling the product of their square roots. Square root of this would be what? 2x. Square root of this is 6. That product, what's 6 times 2x?
12.
12x doubled?
24x.
24x. Okay. Now, you won't have to do it, but I'm trying to help you create it so we can break it down again. When we do this, and look at that, you're going to look at the first and the last. Don't mind what's in the middle yet. The first and last, your instinct should be, I think it's a perfect square trinomial. The way to find out for sure is when you factor it and you put the square root of the first and the square root of the second here, here, you look at your outer and your inner products. That's what we just did out loud, but you can see it visually on the paper. This is 12x, this is 12x. What does the sign have to be to put them together and get negative 24x?
Or negative.
Negative and a negative. Okay, so this right here can also be written as 2x minus 6 squared. You use that fact a lot later, maybe in Algebra 2, when you're dealing with solving equations. And when we solve equations with things, with radicals, that was something that we had to deal with, was taking the square root of something squared. So this right here is how you write your answer. If you see this and it says, if you see this task on your final exam, make sure that you are not saying this is 4x squared plus 36. You can't distribute an exponent. There's a middle term there, so you actually have to write it twice and FOIL it.
For that one, where does the 24 go? Because I understand, because the 2x,
Yeah, I don't
roughly
use that
2
at
x's
all.
are from the 4.
Okay,
FOIL
you're
that.
not going to have to
From the
create,
36.
you're going to start, you're going to have to start, you'll be seeing this on the exam and it'll say factor. So the 24 will already be there. You don't need to create it. I was just kind of helping you see how I came up with this so it would work out.
I know, because like, the 2x times 2x would be 4x2, and the 6
Okay.
times 6 would be
Okay, let's do
36,
the
so
foil.
I'll understand how to get it.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do the FOIL part. Let's FOIL it out to check it. Okay, let's FOIL it out to check it. The first times the first is 4x squared. That's what you just said. Okay.
Oh, that's 2x.
The outer product
Oh, yeah.
is this, the outer pieces multiplied together, which is negative 12x. The inner product is this times this, which is also negative 12x. And then the last, negative 6 times negative 6. What happens with these two middle pieces?